All right, a couple of quick tips I want to show you just to kind of, these are little polishing tips that can, that I use all the time. And there's a few little shortcuts, but as well, a little techniques to fix up things and so on, just make everything a bit nicer. So the first one I want to show you is just neatening up the audio with some transitions.
Oh, but is it really closed? Looks like I left it.
Right, so between those two bits, you can hear that you can really distinctively hear the audio change between them. Being that it's directly aligned to the vision, it's also quite jerky because it's like you're changing the vision and the audio goes whoop, like it really changes quickly. So what we can do to smooth that out is we can actually just do a transition between the audio only. Now, I don't want to transition between each of the shots because transitioning between shots is trying to tell the audience something. So if I used a transition there between each of these shots, it kind of seems odd. It's using a blur transition or something like that between, this should just be a jump cut, right? Which is what it is. But we're trying to smooth out that jump cut so it's not so jumpy, right? So listen to the audio now.
Is it really close? Looks like I left it there just for good.
It's a little less, sort of jumpy. It doesn't sort of cut real instantly. Now, the other thing we can do is between these tracks, we just make sure that the audio is actually kind of level. So we can normalize the audio between them, and that bumps up the audio of the other one to match the others. So it's not so jumpy. We'll listen again.
Is it really closed? Looks like I left it there just for dirt bikers.
Just kind of flows a little nicer, and you can even see over in the audio channel, looking at this meter over on the very right hand side, we want to make sure that it's kind of in the same place.
Is it really closed? Looks like I left it there just for dirt bikers.
All right, so that's just the way that audio just being nice and consistent makes it much easier for the viewer to listen to. Sometimes we want to cut something where we're actually wanting to keep a little bit of the visual there, but the audio doesn't really work, which we can do a J cut. Now, what I do is on here, if I try and move that, it's going to move both, right? But what we can actually do is on a Mac, on DaVinci, and I can't remember the shortcut for Premiere Pro, but I think you hold down Alt or something similar. Now, if I hold down Option, I can then move just the audio, right? So or just the vision. It might be that I actually want a bit of mats.
Looks like I left it there just for dirt bikers.
Right, so it just smooths it out again. It's a way of hiding something. So maybe if there was a bad cut in the visual, but it didn't quite match with the audio, then we can do that. That's what's called a J cut because it kind of looks a little bit like a J. The opposite is then an L cut, which is just the same thing, but in the opposite direction. So in other words, the vision's kind of changing.
Looks like I left it there just for dirt bikers.
Purely up to you. Sometimes it's a creative choice. Sometimes it's out of necessity because something's wrong with the vision between the two cuts. The audio doesn't quite match up, etc. So I do that a lot actually. J and L cuts. When I'm cutting lots, these little shortcuts make a huge difference. So you can, of course, just use the actual keys like this, select it and then cut. But I find keyboard shortcuts is by far the fastest, right? So from here, I'll look back, but maybe I just want to cut there. I can create a cut. Command B creates the cut for me, right? So nice and easy. Now, instead of going like this and then deleting the gap and doing that, it's actually a much faster way to do that. So as you're cutting through time, particularly a whole timeline, you're trying to get it down. One of my favorite shortcuts in the world. I'll just remove that cut. So say I want to bring that. Command Shift square bracket. So square bracket either right or left. That means I can cut that and it trims and brings everything back into place. So that's a really fast way to go through all your vision and just keep trimming it down. So that's trimming to the right. Same thing works to the left. So that's a really fast way to go through all your vision and start chopping it down and trying to get it smaller and smaller. It's just those little shortcuts. Love those ones. Okay, last one here is transitions. So we use transitions to tell the audience something. And most frequently that something is that time has passed. So we're transitioning from one scene to another scene. There is a couple of ways that we can do that. Now, one of those ways is simply just here I've got the scene of where we drop the bike, and then I've got the scene of going to the next bit, right? So something's going to change. Now, the simplest and easiest way to do that is simply put a transition in there and trim the clips. And we just simply literally do a fade transition from one to the other. Now, being that it's meant to have, a long time's meant to have passed, we probably want to, let's just give us a little more room here. Widen this trim out, right? So it's a bit of a slower transition because it's meaning a greater time has passed.
Yeah, something's not entirely straight with this.
Right, so it's just telling the audience that something's shifted. Now, that's the quick and easy way to do it, nice and simple. Alternative is we might even just grab, I'm going to go to effects and just drop a title in there, right? So here we've got some basic title. We're going to insert that in, and then we might create transitions between those two. And probably saw in some of my videos, I use the time, and I might go, okay, it's now 11 a.m. And where are we going? Bumble Hill. Right? It's just basically telling the audience that we're shifting from that location to this location. That's probably a bit long. We'll trim that down. So we're going from here. It's now, this is the time of the day, and we're shifted to a different scene, right? So it's giving them a little bit of a break between the vision to kind of go, okay, we've switched from one scene to another. We're now in a different time of the day, but I can actually be specific and be, you know, set the context a little more and say, okay, we were there, we're now here, right? A bit of location setting. So another way that we could potentially do that too is use a map and show we've gone from here to here. You know, I use that one quite frequently. The other one is we can actually transition with a little bit of vision, right? So here I've got a bit of a drone shot. This happens to be from somewhere else. You know, this is from Grey Gums. Obviously, we weren't at Grey Gums, but I didn't get a chance to get the drone up. I'm going to go and in and out there because I want to specifically drop this shot into that gap. So then I go overwrite and it drops it into that there, create a transition. And so going from here, and we're going to transition from there to there.
Something's not entirely straight with this.
So we can use that broad vision to be able to transition from one scene to the next. So if you have that, that's generally what we use drone shots for, is to set the scene, give the context of where we are, and then also tell the audience that we're transitioning from the down detailed view of where we are, setting some context while transitioning to the next scene, right? So that's a nice one. If you can do it, obviously you need to have the vision to be able to do it. So that's how we transition from one scene to the next.